So it's going to be from a very personal, experiential perspective. I'm very, very pleased to be here, and it's great that this initiative is happening. And of course, I'm very keen for it to be a great success. I'd like to say it's very timely, but actually what I really mean is it's about time. But as a performer, I have been a professional actress for over 30 years. I have rarely worked with creatives of colour in the background, backstage, whether that be stage management, techies, makeup, costume. And when I have, it's really only been when I've worked outside of Wales, particularly in London, and especially when it's a black story, whatever that means. Anyway, so no one is going to tell me that the BAME community cannot fulfill these roles. So the fact that this launch, which if it works effectively, gives opportunity to people of colour and other BAME communities access to these roles in the theatre, it can only be a positive one. For me, the key focus has to be make the individuals who are already working in these fields visible. To see and maybe even talk to someone who looks like you're doing the job that you are daydreaming of doing is so powerful. Yes, we may not want to go into schools at year 6, but when existing practitioners volunteer to meet younger people, maybe older school years, just about to start their professional lives in colleges, you see that person living your dream, and it gives you so much confidence. I know that when I started to want to be an actor, it was easy for me because I could see role models. I could see, and particularly, I remember one particular actress, Carmen Munro. I don't know if anybody remembers Carmen Munro, Desmond's fame, and she's Caribbean background also, and it made me think, actually, I could be doing that. It was such she had such an important impression and valuable impression. So I really believe that when you see it, you can be it. Even though being a woman and a woman of colour has always placed me in the minority in my industry, I can see other actors. Now I want to be able to see not the actors, the techies, the people who are the production team that make my job worthwhile. And yeah, I just would love to go into a pre-production meeting and see a number of people who look like me. It almost sounds, I never know how to say this word properly, an oxymoron, but that's what I feel we need. We need the behind-the-scenes people to be visible. I'm going to give you an experience. It directly relates to working in TV, but I still think it has a relevance on the sort of the theatre stage forum. So I've been on Casualty for over a decade, and not once did I see a person of colour in the hair and makeup department. Everyone was white. Now, and again, this is a personal experience, so that's not so bad if the makeup artists and hair technicians had the experience to work with my natural hair. This is fake, by the way. But the skill set of the makeup team varied widely. So, for anyone who knows, you cannot blow dry afro hair straight on a warm heat setting. It doesn't work. This particular time, this particular makeup artist who happened to be white and obviously had no experience with afro hair, gave up after 40 minutes on my hair And another stylist gallantly stepped up to the task and said, "Okay then, I'll have a go," quote unquote. The purpose of hair and makeup is to get you ready for the filming of the day. After that makeup call, I was in tears, and I had to do 20 minutes of yoga to calm down to get on set, in the right frame of mind. No one can tell me there aren't people of colour out in the wider world who can't work in these fields. They can, because I see them. They're doing it for themselves, their friends, their families, all the time, but not as a career. And they should be doing it as a career, because they are capable and they should be paid a good wage for their skills. Putting hair and makeup aside, the nascent skills in other areas are there. I see them in my own home with my son and his friends who are wizards at Photoshop and writing short films. He's 16, by the way. And this is where this scheme has to come into its own, to get those young people to consider turning all those abilities that they are doing just for a laugh and just to entertain themselves into a potential career in the creative industries, because the talent is there. So, I hope that more and more theatre organisations sign up to the Diversity Action Plan and, as Janice said, act on it. We will gain so much richness of experience in the theatre world as a result, and that's got to be a win-win. Thank you.
As a theatre director, I guess we're all about telling stories, so I'm going to tell you a few stories. We can talk some practice around policy and things that we're actually doing or putting into place at National Theatre Wales, but I hope that a few of these stories will illuminate the things that can be done, and then if anyone wants to talk in more detail about practical steps, then I'm really happy to talk about that. So you'll notice, I suspect, that I look a bit different to most theatre leaders across the UK. Some of that's very obvious, I guess, because I'm not white, I'm not male, I am quite elderly these days in relative terms. I'm not Oxbridge, I didn't go to drama school, I don't have a degree in English, and I fell into theatre by accident. But I got into theatre by accident because I guess I had other insights, other skills, and at some point someone saw something that they needed. And that something, or that someone, was a company called Red Ladder in Yorkshire. And I was waiting tables and was being a student and I was in the last stages of training as a social worker. When I got this phone call to say, we want to make work, we want to refocus the company's work on young people, we want some help because we don't want to go into schools, and somebody said, you might be able to help a little bit. And out of curiosity, I went to meet them. And they employed me for 6 weeks to do some brokering, as I would call it now, basically introducing them to people in the probation services and social services and networks that I had. They then decided, actually, they're quite interested in who I was. Maybe I could be an actor. Now, I know I'm not an actor. Theatre in the Mill in Bradford is wonderful, but I was really rubbish at any of the things I did there, other than go and enjoy shows. And that was sort of the first place where I really saw work that was reflective of some of the things that I witnessed. So the very founding company Phoenix, which is an all-black male company in Yorkshire, bouncing off these studio walls, was something that was mesmerising. So I sort of had learnt as an adult that there was something out there that was interesting, but I didn't have much experience of it. So when they said, come and work for us, I had absolutely no skill set other than my insights to the world I knew. And I ended up being their stage manager, company manager, because they were taking work to youth clubs and community spaces. The kind of support support they had was great, but they had a fundamental policy, which was that every piece of work, which was new writing that they made, would have an integrated company on stage, and each show went into youth clubs, then had a post-show discussion. Those were really important things, and there's, it's not often that you hear about the impact you've had in the sector, and some of you may not know this individual, but I just want you to imagine being a young black person in rural Lancashire, adopted or fostered into a family which is predominantly in an area that is predominantly white, who turns up to this youth club and discovers the show that's telling a story, but more importantly, sees people like him and ends up going, oh, here is a world that I want to be part of, and becomes, let's just say, the poet who's just won this extraordinary award last year. Is a really dynamic individual, and he talks very eloquently about what that encounter meant to him. There's a number of those sorts of stories I could tell you, but I hope that illuminates that something that was a policy decision about making an integrated show and touring it to young people made a difference. Certainly made a difference to me, because I learned about stuff through that process. But also I was quite good at people management, so if I didn't know something about stage management, and it wasn't very technically minded touring, there was always somebody to ask, but there was enough trust in the organisation for them to feel that I was the right person for them. A similar story at Leicester Haymarket when I was artistic director, and I would say, there's been a lot of firsts, and I'm a bit fed up of being first. The first director to run a non-white company in Yorkshire, the first director to be an artistic director of a major regional repertory theatre, the first director of colour to run a national company. It would be quite nice not to be able to say those things and be able to kind of go, there is a plethora of talent, and you don't need to articulate that it's a person of colour or an Asian woman or a black actor or whatever. They just happen to be an actor, a director, a writer. Again, in terms of Leicester Haymarket, we were making a Christmas show called Wizard of Oz. Again, in the organisation, we had made those decisions about having an integrated company all of the time. If you were producing that work, was really significant. There was a moment when I was in the auditorium watching a show one matinee, and a row of children sitting across, next to me, and. In Wizard of Oz, there was a moment when, of course, the Good Witch arrives, and she arrived flown in on this gigantic moon shape, and she's glistening and glamorous. And this young lad next to me just leans forward, and he's mesmerised, and the rest of the class just turn and look at him. And the reason for that was that this actor was a black actor playing the Good Witch. And there was something about that moment that you could see had a huge impact on that child. So it's always been profound to me that, as Suzanne says, if you can see it, you can be it, and that's really important. And it doesn't matter if you don't have a diverse audience, right? Because actually you don't know the complexity of your audience. It's not always visible, that diversity. You don't know how the repercussions of what you put on that stage and what story you're telling will have on your constituency. So more recently, in talking about Wales, I want to just say the potency of some of the work that that I've done and National Theatre Wales is committed to resonates because of those relationships it makes to communities. Sisters was a collaboration last year funded by the Wales in India programme with British Council. It was a collaboration with Asian women here and over in India. But the most important thing about that stayed with me, and it was a wonderful and thoughtful exchange, and the first time I've done something that was so personally close to me, really. But the most important thing, and I think that I'm reflecting on, was that when it was a work in progress sharing in the Wales Millennium Centre. It was packed. And of course people, we had a Q&A and everything, but the most interesting thing was that people kept saying to me, oh wow, we've not seen this sort of audience here. This sort of audience doesn't come to the theatre. And I kind of want to ask the question and ask you, well, why is that? Why is that? Why after 25 years, they said the last time that happened was 25 years ago on a project. Now, why is it 25 years later that you're asking the same question that you shouldn't be asking anyway, especially in a location like the Bay, like Butetown and the Bay, because it is one of the oldest, most diverse communities. So what's happened? So there's some questions to ask about that, and so much of that is about trust, about building relationships, and also just taking the risks, right? I mean, you don't become Rufus Norris at the National Theatre magically overnight. Somebody takes the risks on you and gives you an opportunity to make work on a large space. I remember when I did Death of a Salesman in Leicester, somebody said to me, that's the director's test. And I'm thinking, oh, because it's such a great play that if you screw it up, it's your fault. And that was my first ever show on a big stage in Leicester. And you kind of go, well, we don't all succeed all of the time, but neither do all the other mainstream artists. We're all in the same boat, so let's open that up and have that conversation. I think that the other thing I really want to sort of say is that it's not enough to write a policy. You have to live a practice, right? You have to want to really genuinely make change happen. I hear consistently that it's too hard. Well, actually, it's not too hard. You kind of just have to be out there and open and engaged. And the impact of what you do might not be immediate, and you might not get the credit for it. And who cares, actually, because if you can make that change happen, make it happen. And my final note would be to say to you, you don't have to run an organisation, you don't have to be a big player. Just think about your own impact, the things that you can do to make a difference, to make this change possible. Thank you.
It is such a delight to be here today, to add my voice to the voices of so many who have cried to be included. For some 28 years, I have worked relatively in the art industry, in Black history industry. So it was delightful to have the opportunity to serve as the International Chair for Diversity at the Royal Welsh College. It was a first for me. And I remembered walking into that building thinking, wow, and where are more diverse people who look like me around that building? It has been a very, very honest and open approach that we've had from all the board members. They have said, we don't want to tick a box. We want from the directors, from the board level, right through to the front desk, we want to open our doors, and we want honestly to look at what we can do to be more inclusive. And that for me was refreshing. And the man himself who led that transformational work is Mr. Brian Wheel, and he's right there. And he's the Director of Student Services, and he's really, really, really shaking up that organization in terms of equality and diversity. I think anybody who invites me to do anything will know that I will not tick a box. And so if you're going to invite me to help or work, then I have to honestly be as transparent and as honest as I can be. It was Maya Angelou that said that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. Many Black, Asian, and minority ethnic designers and techies and backstage managers feel and have orated that they feel they are not getting the opportunities even to cross the application line. Once they see your foreign name, like if you say Wobi, it is a foreign name, you are just dropped from the shortlist stage. So the fantastic plan by BECTU is a no-brainer. Every theatre in Wales should sign up to it. And I'm so delighted that the Royal Welsh College have. And up to this stage, one such designer that I was speaking to last week was a woman who's lived all her life here, married to a white Welshman. She originally came from Guyana in the Caribbean islands. And she said, I've been a designer. I've designed so many beautiful clothing that could be used in theatres, but I have not been able to secure a job. That is an untold story inside of her. And she genuinely believed that prejudice is at the back of a lot of the obstacles that people are facing. And Maya also said prejudice is a burden that confuses the past, it threatens the future, and renders the present inaccessible. And I think this breakthrough action plan, if we all, as the organizations that work in this industry, embrace it and take it off the page and make it live, that is the only time that it can begin to effect changes in our organizations. If you don't involve people from diverse ethnic backgrounds in your backstages and honor them and place them on the same place as their white counterparts, you lose an opportunity to introduce vibrancy into your production. You lose a story that you have never heard before. You lose that energy and that creativity that can transform your production. And you lose a certain element of your own humanity. I think it is mandatory that people should look broader to the diversity in Wales. 16% in Cardiff alone. So why are we not more diverse in the workplace, in theatres, even in terms of actors from Wales? So finally, I want to say something. The Royal College started a journey. I don't know quite if they knew how intense the program would be. We started that work from the board members, and I remember the day that we met to run through the diversity session. It was a life-changing experience for some people. It was in-depth discussion. Everybody prioritized it. I think it was the 3rd of January. And nobody wanted to be back in work, but everybody was. And they began to look at everything involving students, backstage people, cleaners. Everybody has been talked to at the moment. I mean, it's a slow process. We're coming to the staff, and I'm hoping that in the next few years, the changes that they have told us that they want to make will become more visible. I think one of the big changes that they had to make was to begin to listen to the diverse ethnic groups around them who have felt excluded. And that was a very brave thing to do, because you don't often want to hear people criticizing you. But they met with the Windrush elders, and who said to them, we have lived and served in this community since the Empire Windrush docked in Tilbury Docks. We have never crossed your front door. They were shocked. And today, they heard that, and they opened their doors wide, opened their doors, and allowed every single person to come in. Today, they host the meetings, the gatherings, the sewing sessions, the Valentine celebrations of all the Windrush elders in Cardiff and in Wales. They house them and they host them every single Thursday. You can pop in, they come in, have coffee, have tea, and tell everybody where to go. So it is incredible, the journey of learning and inclusion that is beginning to happen. Very, very early stages. Have we achieved? No. Have we completed all we want to do? No. But I think the journey is only just beginning because of listening. And I want to say to the people in the backstage, actors and actresses, do not stop talking. Do not stop challenging, because our voices need to be heard. And I'll finish with this statement. Maya Angelou said, and I love that woman, you can tell, she's inspired me. My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive. And to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. And I love that. And I think all these designers, people who are creative, techies, who want the opportunity to make these shows flourish, also want to thrive with style. So let's make it happen. Thank you so much.